Zara Baptiste's fingers trembled as she plugged the USB drive into her boyfriend's laptop. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of Miami traffic bleeding through the windows. Terrence wouldn't be home for another 2 hours, plenty of time to upload the surprise photos she'd been collecting for his birthday. Pictures of them at South Beach, that ridiculous selfie at Wynwood Walls where he'd actually smiled, the sunset from their first date 3 years ago. She was thinking about cake flavors when she saw it. A folder titled "Transactions Do Not Open" sat buried in his documents, wedged between tax files and work presentations. Her cursor hovered over it. She should close the laptop. Respect his privacy. Trust him the way he always said she should. But something in her gut twisted. That same instinct that had been whispering warnings for months now, the one she'd been ignoring because she loved him, because he said she was paranoid because leaving seemed harder than staying. She clicked. The first file opened like a gut punch, a receipt, clean, professional, formatted like something you'd get from buying a car or expensive electronics. Except the item description made her blood turn to ice. Item: Zara Baptiste. Description: female, 28, cybersecurity analyst, active port security clearance. Condition: intact, cooperative. Price: $300,000 USD. Buyer: the architect. Delivery date: 48 hours from confirmation. Payment status: deposit received, $100,000. The cursor blinked on the screen. Her hands went completely numb. The USB drive slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the desk. Terrence had sold her, like a used car, like furniture he didn't want anymore. And someone called the architect had already paid $100,000 as a down payment. For her. Her brain couldn't process it at first. This had to be a mistake. Some sick joke. Maybe it was for a story he was writing, or a prank. Or, she clicked the next file. An email thread. Dozens of messages between Terrence and someone with the address Negotiations Architect Acquisitions, com. She scrolled, each line worse than the last. The asset has no family in the area. Parents deceased. No siblings. Minimal social connections due to isolation protocols I've maintained over the past 18 months. Isolation protocols. She remembered how he'd convinced her to stop talking to her college friends, how he'd said her co-workers were toxic, how movie nights with her book club became unnecessary stress she didn't need. He hadn't been protecting her. He'd been cutting her off, making her easier to disappear. Another message. She works from home 3 days a week. Building has limited security cameras. I can have her ready for transfer at the Port of Miami. Dock 7, Thursday 11th p.m. She trusts me completely. Thursday. That was 2 days from now. 48 hours. Zara's chest tightened. She couldn't breathe. The walls of the apartment, their apartment, the one he'd insisted they get together, the one that was only in his name because her credit was too risky, pressed in around her. She clicked another file. This one made her stomach turn. A dossier. About her. Her work history at Sentinel Security Systems. Her access levels to the Port of Miami's cybersecurity infrastructure. Her daily routines. Her fears. Her triggers. Everything Terrence knew about her, cataloged and presented like a product specification sheet. And at the bottom, a note from the buyer. The port access is worth the premium. Ensure she remains unaware until transfer. Any resistance will decrease value. The laptop screen blurred. She was crying, she realized. Hot, angry tears that she wiped away with shaking hands. 3 years. 3 years of her life with a man who'd been grooming her for sale like livestock. The apartment door rattled, keys jingling. Terrence was home early. Zara slammed the laptop shut, yanked out the USB drive, and shoved it into her pocket. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she heard him in the hallway, talking on his phone, laughing about something. Yeah, 2 more days, he said, his voice carrying through the door. Then the debt's clear and I'm out. Vega can have her port access and I can finally get back to... The door swung open. Terrence stood there, phone pressed to his ear, freezing when he saw her standing by his desk. His eyes flicked to the laptop, back to her face. He knew. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone. Too calm. Way too calm. Zara's mind raced. She couldn't let him know she knew. Not yet. She needed time. An exit strategy. Something. "Hey, baby," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I was just looking for the Netflix password. Mine stopped working." His eyes narrowed. He didn't believe her. She could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his hand slipped into his pocket where he always kept his switchblade. "The password's in my phone," he said slowly, moving toward her. "Why are you using my laptop?" "Mine's dead. Charging in the bedroom." The lies came easier than she expected. Maybe she'd learned more from him than she realized. He stopped 3 feet away, studying her face, looking for cracks, for signs she was lying. Zara held his gaze, didn't flinch, didn't look away. After what felt like an eternity, Terrence smiled. That same charming smile that had made her fall in love with him 3 years ago. "You okay? You look upset." "Just tired," she said. "Work's been brutal." "Why don't you go lie down? I'll make dinner." He moved past her, sitting down at his laptop, his fingers already flying across the keyboard, checking what she'd accessed, what she'd seen. Zara walked toward the bedroom, every instinct screaming at her to run, but she couldn't. Not yet. He was watching. If she bolted now, he'd know for sure. And then what? He'd call this architect person, move up the timeline, and she'd disappear tonight instead of Thursday. She needed a plan. She needed to think. In the bedroom, she grabbed her phone with shaking hands and searched. The Architect Miami. Nothing useful. Just architecture firms and design studios. She tried Architect Criminal Miami. Still nothing. Whoever this buyer was, they were careful. Professional. Her work laptop sat on the nightstand. An idea formed. Dangerous and desperate. If she couldn't find information on the architect through normal channels, maybe she could find them another way. Terrence had mentioned the port of Miami, Dock 7. That was her territory. She'd designed half the security systems there. She had access to shipping manifests, surveillance systems, everything. If this architect was using the port for illegal transactions, there'd be a trail. And if she could find that trail, maybe she could find them first, before they found her. She pulled up the port's security network on her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Dock 7 had scheduled activity for Thursday night. A private vessel, registered to a shell company called Songdo Imports, Korean-owned. No manifest on file, which was illegal but not uncommon for private diplomatic or corporate vessels. She dug deeper, hacking into camera archives she technically wasn't supposed to access. Footage from Dock 7 over the past 6 months. The same vessel, appearing every few weeks like clockwork. Always at night. Always with minimal crew visible. But in one clip from 3 weeks ago, a man stepped into frame. Tall, Korean, expensive suit, moving with the kind of confidence that made security guards look the other way. He was flanked by 2 others, but he was clearly in charge. The timestamp showed him entering a black Mercedes G-Wagon, license plate SNG 047. Zara screenshotted everything, saved it to an encrypted cloud drive, and deleted her search history. Her hands were steadier now. The panic was crystallizing into something sharper, something useful. She had 48 hours before Terrence handed her over like a package, but she wasn't going to wait around to be delivered. If the architect wanted her, he was going to get her. Just not the way he expected. She packed light. 1 change of clothes, her laptop, phone charger, the USB drive with all of Terrence's incriminating files, and $300 in emergency cash she'd been hiding in an old tampon box because Terrence never looked there. Everything fit in her work backpack. Through the bedroom door she could hear him in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, humming like everything was normal, like he wasn't planning to sell his girlfriend to a Korean crime lord in 2 days. She waited until he turned on the stove, the sound of sizzling covering her movement, and slipped out the bedroom window onto the fire escape. The Miami heat hit her like a wall, even at 7 p.m. She climbed down 3 floors, dropped into the alley, and ran. She didn't stop running until she reached the bus stop 6 blocks away, lungs burning, sweat soaking through her shirt. Only then did she pull out her phone and check the time. 7:45. Terrence wouldn't notice she was gone for at least another hour, maybe 2 if she was lucky. That gave her a head start. Not much of one, but enough. The bus arrived, and Zara climbed on, swiping her card with trembling fingers. She took a seat in the back, watching Miami blur past the windows. The city she'd lived in for 5 years suddenly felt foreign, dangerous. Every face could be someone working for Terrence, for the Vega cartel, for the architect. She pulled up the screenshot of the Mercedes G-Wagon, again, SNG 047. If the architect was meeting Terrence at Dock 7 on Thursday, he'd probably do a reconnaissance run beforehand. Wednesday night, maybe. Tomorrow. The thought formed before she could stop it. What if she got there first? It was insane, reckless, the kind of plan that got people killed in movies. But what other choice did she have? Run to the police? And tell them what? That her boyfriend was selling her to a criminal she'd never met? They'd ask for proof, evidence. And by the time they investigated, Thursday would come and she'd be gone. Run to another city? With $300 and no car? Terrence knew her social security number, her passwords, her entire digital footprint. He'd find her in a week. No. Her only chance was to control the narrative, to stop being the victim and become something else. The bus reached the Port District just after 9 p.m. Zara got off 3 blocks from Dock 7, pulling her hood up against the coastal wind. The area was mostly industrial, warehouses and shipping containers stacked like metal mountains against the night sky. She circled the perimeter, staying in the shadows, watching. Security was light, just a few guards doing rounds every 30 minutes. She'd designed this system. She knew its blind spots better than anyone. At 9:45, a black Mercedes G-Wagon pulled into the restricted parking area near Dock 7. License plate SNG 047. Zara's heart stopped. He was here, the architect, a full day early. 3 men exited the vehicle. 2 were clearly security, bulky, alert, hands resting near concealed weapons. But the third man was different. Tall, lean, moving with the precision of someone who'd never had to second-guess a decision in his life. Even from 50 yards away, Zara could feel the authority radiating off him. This was the man who'd paid $100,000 for her, who'd spend $200,000 more in 2 days. The men walked toward the dock, inspecting something. Checking the location, probably. Making sure Terrence hadn't lied about the setup. They stayed for 20 minutes, then returned to the Mercedes. Zara made a decision that would change everything. She ran, straight across the parking lot, using the shadows of shipping containers as cover, closing the distance between her and the G-Wagon. The security guards were facing away, scanning the perimeter. The architect was on his phone, distracted. She reached the vehicle just as they were about to climb in, and she dove into the cargo area in the back, pulling the cover over herself, wedging her body between cases of what felt like equipment or supplies. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed her whole. Zara pressed her hand over her mouth, forcing her breathing to slow, to quiet. Her heart was a drum in her ears. The engine started. Voices spoke in Korean, low and calm. She didn't understand the words, but the tone was professional, relaxed. They had no idea she was here. The vehicle moved, turning out of the parking lot, merging onto the highway. Zara had no idea where they were going, no idea what she'd do when they arrived. All she knew was that she'd just climbed into a vehicle owned by the man who wanted to buy her, and she was either about to save her life or end it. The drive lasted 30 minutes, maybe 40. Time felt elastic in the darkness, stretching and compressing until Zara couldn't tell if they'd been moving for hours or minutes. Her legs cramped, her back ached, but she didn't dare shift position, didn't dare make a sound. The vehicle slowed, turned. The smooth highway became rougher terrain, gravel crunching under the tires. Then they stopped. Doors opened. Footsteps. The men were getting out. Zara's pulse thundered in her ears. This was it. They'd open the back any second now and find her. She jumped from one nightmare into another, and this time there was no escaping. But the footsteps moved away. Voices faded. A metal door clanged somewhere in the distance. Silence. She waited. 5 minutes. 10. When she was sure they were gone, she carefully lifted the cargo cover and peered out. She was in some kind of warehouse, industrial. High ceilings with exposed beams and dim fluorescent lights that buzzed, like angry insects. The Mercedes was parked near a loading bay, surrounded by wooden crates and metal containers stamped with Korean characters. No people. No movement. Zara climbed out of the vehicle, her muscles screaming in protest. She crouched behind the G-Wagon, scanning the space. There were offices along one wall, lights on in 2 of them. Voices drifted through an open door. The 3 men from earlier, speaking rapid Korean. She should run. There had to be an exit somewhere, a loading dock door, a side entrance, something. But her eyes caught on something else. One of the crates near the vehicle had been pried open, the lid sitting askew. Inside, she could see stacks of documents, electronics, what looked like passports bundled in plastic. Her cybersecurity instincts kicked in before common sense could stop her. She moved closer, pulling out her phone and snapping photos. If she was going down, she'd at least have evidence of what this operation was. Proof that could possibly keep her alive if she needed leverage. The documents were shipping manifests. Not for the Songdo vessel, for a dozen different companies, all shell corporations if the patterns were anything like what she'd studied in her security training. The electronics were satellite phones, encrypted hard drives, equipment designed for people who didn't want to be traced. And the passports. God, the passports. Dozens of them. Different faces, different names, but all with the same hollow look in their eyes. People who'd been disappeared, bought, sold, just like her. Interesting choice. The voice came from behind her, soft and accented and terrifyingly calm. Zara spun around, phone clattering from her hand. The man from the dock stood 5 feet away. The architect. Up close, he was even more intimidating than she'd imagined. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and the kind of face that revealed absolutely nothing. He could have been 35 or 45. He could have been bored or furious. There was no way to tell. I was wondering when you'd reveal yourself, he continued in perfect English. You've been in my vehicle for 43 minutes. Your breathing pattern changed 6 minutes ago when we parked. You are either very brave or very stupid. Zara's mind went blank. Every plan, every clever thing she'd thought to say, evaporated under his gaze. Her voice cracked. She forced herself to stand straighter, to not look like prey even though that's exactly what she was. You paid $300,000 for me. I thought I should introduce myself before the transaction. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, or irritation. It was gone too quickly to read. Zara Baptiste, he said, and hearing her name in his voice made her skin crawl. 28 years old, cybersecurity analyst for Sentinel Security Systems, Port of Miami clearance level 4. Parents deceased in a car accident 7 years ago. No siblings, no close. Friends thanks to your boyfriend's careful management. You're exactly what the file promised. And you're the architect, she shot back, anger cutting through her fear. The man who buys people like their cargo. I acquire assets, he corrected. Usually business interests, occasionally information, rarely people, and never without careful consideration. He stepped closer, and Zara's instinct was to back away, but she held her ground. Your boyfriend, however, is an amateur. Sloppy. He owes Carmen Vega $200,000 from a gambling debt and thought selling you would clear his accounts and give him profit. He has no idea what you're actually worth. And what am I worth to you? The question came out harder than she intended. That depends. He circled her slowly like a buyer inspecting a car. Clinical, detached. Terrence promised you'd be cooperative, that you'd come quietly and fulfill your function without resistance. But you broke into my vehicle and infiltrated my warehouse. That suggests the file was incomplete. The file doesn't know shit about me, Zara said. She was shaking now, adrenaline and terror making her reckless. Terrence spent 3 years breaking me down so he could sell me easier. But here's what he didn't account for. I'm really good at surviving. I survived my parents' death. I survived him. And I'll survive whatever you think you bought. The architect stopped circling. For the first time, something close to interest entered his expression. You climbed into my vehicle, he said slowly, knowing I'm the man who purchased you, knowing what I do, knowing I could kill you and dump your body in Biscayne Bay before morning. Why? This was it, the only card she had to play. Because I have something you want, Zara said. Port access, security clearances, knowledge of systems that could make your operations invisible to federal oversight. Terrence was selling you a scared woman with a key card. What you actually got is someone who can rebuild your entire digital infrastructure and make sure no one ever finds you. She watched his face carefully, looking for a crack, a tell, anything. And in exchange, he asked, you don't hand me over to Carmen Vega, you keep me alive. And you help me make sure Terrence never touches another woman the way he touched me. The silence stretched between them like a blade. Then the architect did something unexpected. He smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. But it was real. I think, Zara Baptiste, that you and I need to have a much longer conversation. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then pocketed it again. Terrence Williams will not be a problem after tonight. Carmen Vega's collection methods are effective but public. I prefer subtlety. Zara's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means your boyfriend made the mistake of selling an asset to 2 buyers. Carmen put down $50,000 last week. I matched Terrence's, asking price to secure exclusivity. When she discovers he's been playing both sides, she will handle the debt herself. Quite permanently. He was going to let Terrence die, maybe even facilitate it. Zara waited for guilt to hit her. Horror. Something. But all she felt was cold satisfaction. As for you, the architect continued, gesturing toward the offices, you have a choice. I can drop you at a police station right now. You can tell them everything. Try to rebuild a life with nothing and no one while Carmen's people look for you and Terrence's gambling associates come calling for the debt he left behind. He paused. Or you can come upstairs. We'll discuss terms. You'll show me what you're actually capable of. And if you're as valuable as you claim, we'll renegotiate our arrangement. I don't keep assets that can't think for themselves. They're useless. Zara's mind raced. This was insane. He was a criminal. He trafficked in people and information and God knew what else. Everything in her screamed that going with him was wrong. But he was also right. She had no one. Nowhere to go. And if she walked away now, she'd spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. At least this way, she had leverage, knowledge, a skill set he needed. At least this way, she wasn't a victim. What's upstairs? She asked. My office? Coffee? A laptop where you can demonstrate your capabilities. And depending on how this conversation goes, possibly your new workspace. And if I say no? Then I respect your decision and have my driver take you wherever you want to go. But understand that the protection I'm offering expires the moment you leave this building. After that, you're on your own. It wasn't really a choice. They both knew it. Zara looked at the crate of passports one more time. All those faces. All those people who'd probably been given the same impossible choice. But none of them had what she had. None of them could offer what she was offering. She met the architect's eyes. I want full access to your security systems, complete transparency on what you're asking me to do, and I want it in writing that I'm not property. I'm a contractor. For the first time, the architect's smile reached his eyes. Let's go upstairs, Miss Baptiste. I think we have a deal to negotiate. He turned and walked toward the offices. confident she'd follow. And after a moment of hesitation, after 3 years of being controlled and sold and treated like something to be managed, Zara Baptiste made a choice. She followed the man who bought her into the lion's den, and she started planning how to own it. If you want to see what happens when Zara sits down with the architect and discovers what he really wants from her, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Part 2 is dropping soon. And trust me when I tell you that Zara's first negotiation with a Korean crime boss is going to change everything you think you know about this story. Comment below and tell me, do you think Zara just made the best decision of her life or the worst? And what would you do in her position? Drop your thoughts, smash that like button, and I'll see you in part 2 where things get even more dangerous.